Hello everyone and welcome back to my reviews of the Alien Earth episodes in the Alien Earth series. We're all the way up to episode 6 and this is only an 8-episode series, so we are almost done already, which is kind of wild to think about. It feels like it just came out, but this episode is called The Fly, and man, was that a prelude to what was gonna happen, and man did I not see it coming. If you guys aren't familiar with the format of how I do these, I do like a 1 or 2 minute blurb for a spoiler free section, and then we get right into the spoiler section itself, and then I do a rating at the end that is spoiler free again. So if you guys have watched the episode already and you want to hear me talk about it, it'll only take like a minute or two, so let's go ahead and get into it. First off, this episode was really slow at first, and it really feels like a big like step backwards from episode 5, which was like its own kind of like mini alien movie, which was really sick. But there's some major plot implications that happen in the latter half of this episode, and it gets really dark really quick. So if you're getting into this episode and you're like, man, this feels so boring compared to the last one, please hold out for the latter half of the episode because it gets dark real quick. I will say that by episode 6 in the series, I'm starting to see that some plot lines are either being erased or becoming repetitive, or outright have just been forgotten entirely. There were some noticeable setups that they made in the previous episodes that at this point I was just like, oh, well, maybe I'll wait for another episode, and they just never come back. And it kind of shows how all these kind of like converging stories of how they wanted to tell a story about a ship crash landing in a city. They want to tell the story of the Maginot, and they want to tell the story of the Neverland Island. It's like all of these, some things are starting to get lost in the shuffle here. That's kind of not unheard of when it comes to a lot of different like TV shows, but I think this show I'm starting to notice how they're kind of forgetting some things or just leaving some plot threads just kind of like off in the wind, but we'll get to that in the spoiler section. Obviously, we're out of flashback land and we're back on the island, which is not where my favorite bits of the series have been happening so far. And basically, if it's the city or if it's the Maginot, that's kind of where I lock in. I'm go, oh, the good stuff's about to happen. But the island, I'm kind of like more so. I kind of clock out unless it's the lab segments, which, gee, there are some of those in this episode. Smile. And I'm sure this is not like a weird sentiment. I know a lot of people feel this way, as like the Neverland stuff isn't quite hitting as hard as the rest of the parts of the series, but it feels like they were just kind of trying to tell a lot of stories at the same time. Some hit really well and some don't, and that's just kind of how it goes. There's more Morrow and Kirsh stuff this episode that's really interesting, and I'm really realizing that these two kind of serve to be like kind of the backbone of the show's characters, and I'm more interested in their plot lines and their characters than anybody else. Kirsh fans will especially be interested in this episode based off of some really peculiar choices that he makes that have been kind of hinted at over time, and I'll leave it at that. But I'll tell you what, the latter half of this episode is wild. Like, things start going really bad really quickly and not in the ways that you thought. So if you start this episode and you're like, man, I feel myself kind of let down here, especially compared to episode 5, the latter half is well worth the wait, so don't skip this one. Yeah, this is officially where we'll be ending the spoiler-free section of the review, and we'll be heading on to the spoilers themselves. There should be a timestamp here that you can skip to if you want to just go to the overall rating of the episode, in my opinion, if you're still interested in that. So yeah. Okay, spoiler section. What a crazy episode that this was. I want to start off with some of the negative parts and kind of go chronologically, because it's kind of like that, where it's like the more negative parts are the beginning and then it gets better as it goes towards the end. The Nibs issue, where she actually got really interesting, and how she was like kind of like not dealing with the trauma of everything that happened with the crash and the aliens very well, and she was having kind of like a psychotic break. They just literally erased that. And I'm not even like, that is literally the plot line, is that they erase that issue. It could not be more like a writer coming in and just going and just erasing this out of the script. Like, they literally just go, oh, we can just reset her memories. Of course, there's a little bit of a moral quandary about it of like, hey, should we put her in like human therapy or should we erase her memories? It gets shut down really quickly by the creepy businessman that's like Boy Cavalier's like right-hand man. They even fire Arthur, the Dame Sylvia's husband, that's also a scientist. But realistically, they just kind of like sweep this problem under the rug, and it serves once again more to only help another character's story, and it's not really about Nibs at all. And I just like, I don't know, it just felt kind of cheap to me. And the thing I'm referring to is that it leads to Wendy questioning Dame Sylvia and Prodigy in general. Because Wendy's like, well, you can't just erase her memories. That's stupid. You can't do that. That's messed up. And Dame Sylvia's like, no, I was just trying to help. It's okay. And she's like, well, what if you don't know what's right for us? And, you know, kind of stomps out. So it creates some division between Wendy and Prodigy, or at least Dame Sylvia. So there's that, I guess. But I feel bad for Nibs, who like her whole plotline in the show existed up until this point. And they're just like, oh, it's just another thing for Wendy. And they just gotta like throw it out. Like, there's some hints that it could still continue because now she's like really distressed that she doesn't remember any of this stuff. But that's about all we have to work off right now. Like that plotline is essentially just like dead in the water, which makes me sad. Also, I think this plotline is also kind of like really contrived because I feel like if I have like a pseudo child, because that's how Dame Sylvia and Arthur treat them, is they treat them as pseudo children. If you, for some reason, had to erase your child's memories because of something really traumatic that was going to cause them to completely break down, I would hazard a guess that you would, when they wake up from the procedure or whatever, you go, I'm glad you're okay. And they're like, what do you mean, glad I'm okay? I don't remember anything. Exactly. You went through something so awful and so terrible, we had to give you amnesia because you went through something so awful. Are you doing all right? And they're like, yeah, what happened? And you very calmly go, okay, there was this really big scary crash in the city and we sent you guys out to help. And it was really, really rough for you. You saw some scary stuff and you weren't doing so hot. They'd be like, whoa, wow, really? What are some of the stuff I see? And just be like, well, there were these creepy alien things. Oh, wow, creepy aliens? Yeah, but you're okay now. You don't have to worry about it now, but we were really worried for you. But we gave you medicine and now you're okay. And then it was probably like, oh, wow, that's a lot, but at least I'm okay. And then that's it. I don't know why they kept it a secret. Why did they not explain to Nibs at all that the memory thing happened? It feels like it almost feels like it's that solely exists there to create tension between Nibs, Wendy, and Dame Sylvia. Realistically, I feel like Dame Sylvia is a smart enough character that she would just go, I should probably give her a very calm debrief over the memories that she just had cleansed in a way that she can process better. And then that solves the issue on both ends. But they're like, well, what if we don't tell them? And then the characters can fight and get mad at each other. This show has been so great up until this point and still is, but shows do this sometimes where it's like, plotlines solely exist off of decisions that I don't feel like characters are dumb enough to make. You know, like two characters just not communicating well leads to a complete breakdown, and then we have to figure it out later. Tales old time, like the shows do this all the time, where they're like, oh wow, if you had just told me, it would have been okay. It's a trope, and it's sad to kind of see it kind of rear its ugly head in an Alien Earth series, but here it is. Yeah, the TLDR is she could have just calmly explained the memories that she lost immediately after the procedure in a way that's much easier to digest, that doesn't traumatize her, and it would have been fine. But we needed conflict in the show, so yeah, that happens. It is cool to see that Yutani is in action again. I'm happy they're not kind of keeping her to these very like cool, like secretive meetings with Morrow. They're actually giving her like character and personality. They have to meet with Boy Kavalier for the whole legal thing that they were talking about earlier in the series. This is the legal matters to settle the whole crash thing. And despite Kavalier being the one who set this up in the first place, he really flips the script on her and makes things really nasty for her in general, which I thought is interesting because, like, despite the fact that Boy Kavalier is really annoying and very frustrating, he is a smart character, and he shows it time and time again that, like, hey, I'm a genius, so that's why I can get away with this stuff. It's funny because if you watch the last episode, you know that Boy Kavalier is the reason that the Maginot crashed, because he, reached out to somebody who was on the ship who had somebody die trying to get the aliens and sympathized with them, quote unquote, sympathized with them and paid them to saboteur the ship from the inside out, and did so successfully so it would crash into Prodigy so he could get hold of the aliens. This is all his orchestration. But one of the theories that I had when I first started watching the series, like the first 2 or 3 episodes, was that Wayland Yutani are the ones that, crash landed the ship into Prodigy in order to spread the aliens into Prodigy to cause Prodigy to crash. Obviously, that ended up being the case, but in this meeting that they have together, the boy Prodigy, Boy Kavalier, it kind of levies that idea like, oh, did you crash this ship into Prodigy on purpose? That way you can break us down from the inside? And it clearly starts making her really nervous because she's like, gosh, no, I didn't, but that makes sense. Like that is something that would be very feasible, and people, especially like the public and the five, like the governing body of all of them, would definitely be like, that does make sense. Did you do that on purpose? And she starts sweating. She starts sweating bullets. So it kind of shows how like devious he is and how like there's a reason he's in the position he's in. Because sometimes with how silly and dumb he is, you're like, okay, are you really a genius? But there are times like these where he finesses other characters where you're like, oh, that's why. It's funny because Yutani technically wins this little like legal dispute, but only with a settlement of billions of dollars, and she has to wait 6 weeks to get the aliens back, which is more than enough time for them to get into some shady stuff that may change things, which we will get to that later. Also, I want to say this tied to the whole meeting part of the episode. The contemporary music is really getting distracting. This is a criticism that I've seen levied at this show before in other people's reviews, that like hearing like, you know, Tool or Metallica, it's like, it's cool, but it's like really distracting. But I didn't mind it too much because it was just a like kind of like a cool way to end the episode and let you know that the credits roll were about to hit. But here they started playing it like in the middle of the episode, like as Yutani and Boy Kavalier are going to meet, like it's playing contemporary music. And I swear, if there is like a scene where like the Xenomorph's running loose and it's running around to, I don't know, Megadeth or something, it's going to take me out entirely. Like I'm not going to be able to focus. Like I get that it's a show and TV shows like to do this where they're like, let's take this cool licensed music and make this scene super epic. But usually those are in contemporary situations where it's not out of place. If a 2005 song plays in like a 2010 TV series, it's not jarring because that song exists in that universe. But like, why is like Tool playing at over top the actions of people hundreds of years in the future? Like, it's just really weird. It's very bizarre. And I really hope it stops here and this is a one-off. But like I said, if we start getting something weird, like Symphony of Destruction, as like the aliens running down a hallway, like I'm not gonna be able to take it seriously. It is funny at the end of this meeting, Morrow and Kirsh end up in the elevator together, and they kind of have just what is essentially just like a childish argument. They're like a big because they're both threatening to kill each other in very like subtle ways. Like I said, it feels so immature. They're just like, well, I like that you don't feel pain because it makes it better for me when I kill you. And then Kirsh is like, well, seeing the pain on people as you kill them is actually really cool. It's like, it's so petty, but I think it fits their dynamic of just kind of like being at each other's throats. But it did feel kind of immature, which was really funny. Another plot point that is more expanded upon this episode is that Joe is secretly devising a way to get Wendy off the island, despite the fact that Wendy actually kind of doesn't want to get off the island, is feeling a big kinship to the Xenomorphs and the aliens in general, because she feels like they don't have a voice and they aren't being advocated for at all, which is technically true, but they're also, you know, scary killing machines. So that's kind of terrifying, but she has a lot of empathy for them and feels if she leaves, then nobody's going to be able to speak up for their perspective. So she doesn't really want to leave, but Joe wants to get her off the island because she is not safe. No duh. And thankfully he does find this, as Arthur, who got fired in the whole kerfuffle with the Nibs thing earlier for trying to give her human therapy over just erasing her memories, basically sneaks him the boat code, like as subtly as he can before he leaves after he is fired. But like I said, this episode takes such a turn in the latter half that it gets really dark really quickly, and it stays that way until the end. And I'm pretty sure this is our setup for the final 2 episodes. So first, Isaac just straight up dies. He just dies. Yeah, the weird alien fly insects things that we actually haven't seen in action yet, because we've seen the TSLs, we've seen the blood ticks, we've seen the Xenomorphs obviously, but there was this like fly insect thing that was always visible through cages, but we never saw them yet. These things are kind of like the rust monsters in D&D in that they eat metal. Isaac goes to feed the metal flies, and there's this little like kind of like microwave looking like safe door setup thing, and as he goes to pull it, he breaks it off because he's a synth, he's super strong. So he unwisely decides that he's going to unlock the door and feed them directly. Here's the funny thing, he's supposed to have Curly with him to go with him to do this in case of something bad happening, but because he's getting a little bit of an ego with being Kirsh's special little assistant, he lets his ego get in the way and he goes by himself. So while he's feeding the I want to call them the rust monsters, the metal flies, as he's feeding the metal flies, so the Tiosaurus, who's in the cage right next to this one, literally the neighboring cage, just gets up and headbutts the cage, and this knocks the door shut, leaving Isaac inside. The meat flies zoom down and spit some of this nasty ass on him that starts breaking down his face, and they start eating him alive. It's rough to watch, especially considering the fact that out of all the characters, I think Isaac has been like the most reasonable out of all of them. Like Wendy is still vaguely immature, a little naive, but means well. Curly obviously has some jealousy issues. Shmi's still like a kid. Slightly has the whole thing going on with Morrow, but we'll get to that. Nibs is having plot lines given to her and also taken away. Traumatized overall period though, but like Isaac was probably the most like normal and well put together out of all of them. So for him to be the one that's like eaten alive is like, oh, it's brutal. Oh, he was probably the one that deserved it the least. And that's not even the worst thing to happen this episode. Arthur, as I previously mentioned, was about to leave after being fired after secretly showing Joe the boat code. But also to help, he was going to turn off the trackers that are inside the synths. But it gives him an error, well, because Isaac is dead, so he can't be tracked anymore. And he's like, what's happening? So he runs down to the lab to discover Isaac's dead body, but guess who was waiting there because he's doing Morrow's dirty work? Slightly. So while horrified and trying to get Isaac's body out of the insect cage, Slightly opens the door to the overmorph cage, and a facehugger actually does get Arthur, latches to his face. I like this twist because we were so certain over the course of multiple episodes that this would be Joe would be the one who got face hugged. And I know Joe haters are probably angry about that because I really want this character to get his comeuppance. But man, this guy, Arthur, he's had it rough. He gets fired. He has to leave his wife behind. His pseudo kids are in various stages of distress and pain. And now you're going to die in probably the most painful, worst way possible. This is the kind of teeth that this show has that I think makes it better than a lot of alien media that has come out in recent memory. Because either it's been just kind of like mindless violence where you're just like, okay, whatever. Or it's been like everybody has plot armor and everybody's okay. And I think that the kind of just willingness to be that cruel to a character that realistically was probably the biggest moral voice on the show. Like even like besides Joe, he's the one that's always sticking up for the synths and trying to humanize them, trying to go the path of least pain and distress on their end. And he's the one that gets fired, has to leave his wife behind. He can't take care of his pseudo kids anymore. And then he gets face hugged, which means he's going to get chest bursted, which is such an awful way to go. They're being so cruel to this guy. So cruel to this guy. It's like, sheesh, man. Life is unfair sometimes. Also, to make things really interesting, Kirsh was watching all this happen on the security cams. He's just letting it happen, and he could have stepped in at any moment, and he just chose not to. Furthermore, even Boy Kavalier asks if anything is all right with Kirsh because he realizes that Kirsh is kind of lost in thought. And he goes, yeah, affirmative. And then just keeps watching the security cams like his right-hand man is not dying, like Arthur hasn't been face hugged, like Slightly isn't the one that did it. He's just kind of watching. He's just observing. So we've talked about in previous the parts of the spoiler reviews in previous episodes that like Kirsh is being kind of weird because Kirsh has been aware of the whole Morrow Slightly thing since it started happening. He's able to hear Morrow talking in Slightly's head and has not disclosed this to anyone. He is not doing anything about it, which is kind of like brought up a kind of a question as to where are his motives at this point in the series, because obviously regardless of what his motives are, Boy Kavalier is not going to be happy with him not reporting on this, not doing anything about it. So I think it's one of two things. I was right in my theory of Kirsh disliking or wanting rid of Boy Kavalier because Boy Kavalier kind of treats Kirsh like garbage. Or he just wants Prodigy gone in general and thinks they're just inferior. So he's just kind of letting this chaos unfold on purpose to kind of bring the downfall that he believes to be deserved. Or B, my other theory, after the meeting, since Boy Kavalier has to return the aliens within 6 weeks, if they gestate their own xenomorph, this case being an Arthur, and that xenomorph is born, that is technically a new organism. So maybe that gets through the legal red tape. Maybe Yutani has no claim to that new xenomorph, so technically they own that one. And then maybe they're going for like a 4D chess play there. I don't know, it's pretty spicy, and the latter seems to be a really, really smart plan to get around that. But I just don't believe that Kirsh would let Isaac die like that, despite the fact that, you know, he's supposed to be cold and unfeeling. That's like his right-hand man. That is an asset to Kirsh to have somebody to help him out. So it doesn't seem like that'd be smart from his perspective to let that happen, but who knows? Either way, I'm very excited in seeing his motivations in next week's episode. I think no matter what, like I said, I think Boy Kavalier is going to be pretty mad about the whole situation, so who knows? I also want to point out that the alien that they have in captivity definitely does the alien drop-down thing from Alien Isolation. I love that game so much, so I'm glad it's still getting so much attention from other alien media. Also, the idea of 2 xenomorphs roaming around loose on the island could be really cool for the potential finale. I'm not sure how they're going to deal with that, considering that the Lost Boys are really like OP. Like Wendy herself was able to deal with one xenomorph fairly all right. Like she got knocked down, of course, and had to be like resuscitated, but like she made it through that experience. So a whole group of those guys can probably handle 2 xenomorphs. But as we've seen, much to the chagrin of a lot of people watching the show, they're kind of willing to kind of shift the power levels of things around as needed to make for a more cinematic experience. So maybe it won't be an issue. I don't know. I guess we'll see, I guess. I think overall, if I'm going to give this episode a rating, which I am, I think I'm going to give it a solid 8.5 out of 10. I think the first half of the episode is like a 6 out of 10 before it really gears up. But that latter half of the episode had me gasping and worried for the characters in the next episode leading up into the finale. Because like these last 2 episodes are it. That's all we got. So I'm glad they set up some good stakes and bumped it all the way up to an 8.5. I do think, sadly, characters like Smee and Curly are kind of getting lost in the shuffle here. I know they wanted to do the whole like Peter Pan thing, but it really does feel like they barely exist in the series. Smee especially just really has nothing going on at all in the series. I feel really bad for him, like, because the actor is doing a really good job at the portrayal, but they just didn't give Smee a plot line at all. They kind of gave Curly a plot line, but it's like they forgot the plot line existed. So I don't know. I feel bad for them. Hopefully they get something cool in the last 2 episodes. I got a bad feeling in my gut. They're just gonna be like, oh no, they die. Whatever. No, darn. And it's like, well, you didn't really give us a reason to be attached to them, so it doesn't hit hard. But what did you think of episode 6 of Alien Earth? And if you haven't watched it, go ahead and go watch it. Come back here and tell me what you thought about it. Also, if you like this video, make sure you like and subscribe, because that's how I know this is the kind of content that you want to see. Other than that, hopefully I made your day a little bit better today, friends. If I didn't, I'll try to make your day better in the next video. And if I don't see you there, I'll see you when I see you. Goodbye.